Hello, we're here for another episode in my series on Canada and other things and whatnot and things of interest that I'm putting up on my YouTube site called Eight Eagles Gather. And this episode I'm going to call O Canada, We Stand on Guard for Thee. And you just finished seeing a little bit of a film on the flag itself. And this particular flag was given to me several years ago by the Member of Parliament in the area of Brandon Souris in Manitoba. And apparently what he said at that time was that every Canadian had the right to obtain an official flag of Canada, kind of a one-time gift. And this flag is a fairly large one, and it's got tie cords at the end, and so I kind of have that proudly in my collection. I'm also wearing a T-shirt, okay, right here that describes the school in Brandon where I started my teaching career and finished my teaching career some 43 and a half years later. So still basically doing teaching now as a teacher, having the attitude of a teacher, talking to all kinds of people right across the country and in conversation locally on various trips and so on, and always talking in the fashion or the way of being a devoted Christian person, as much as I can possibly do that with the counsel of the Lord speaking through His Holy Spirit. Now, when we talk about Canada, I always refer back to the 60s, and I think on some of my episodes before I kind of mentioned that I was kind of stuck in the 60s and whatnot, and it was basically my favorite years. It was my growing up teenage years. It was the time when I was graduating from high school into university, got my degree, Bachelor of Science degree at Brandon University with a major in physics and philosophy. And in some of the episodes down the road a little bit, I'll go over some of my books that I've done. So both my wife and myself, we run a publishing company called Je Suis En Route, and we also run another company, and it's a log building company. And so on some of the episodes later on, I'll show you a little bit about especially the log building company and what that has to entail. But right now I want to talk specifically about O Canada, We Stand on Guard for Thee. And in some of my writings I've said and then asked the question, do we just sing that song as a national anthem, or do we really, really mean it deep down? And perhaps that gives one connotation to Christian people, to be always praying for the leadership in our country, and one ought to do that, praying for our leadership. But also, I'm of the kind of the attitude, I've always been involved in governance and approaching government people. Also involved at one point in time, way back in Manitoba, as a president of one of the local constituencies in the province of Manitoba. So I've been on conciliation boards, I've been on arbitration boards, I've been negotiating on teachers' salaries, things like that. I'm kind of a union worker support person because I have been working on teacher contracts and things like that, so well used to doing that kind of thing and know a little bit about governance. One of the things that we have in Canada, however, we have elected people that we elect at a federal level with certain jurisdictions under the federal government, and we have a provincial governments in the provinces and territories that we have that deal with totally different jurisdictions. In other words, looking after certain aspects. Well, for example, education is a provincial jurisdiction. Looking after natural resources and things like that is also a provincial jurisdiction. So we'll see some of the aspects of how that runs out, applying differently in different provinces and so on. But when we look at the total picture of Canada, I want to just talk about one aspect this evening, and that has to do with the number of homeless people that we have right now in our country. And it's not too much different in a lot of the other countries as well. And I don't want to get into the many different ramifications of why this happened or why it's continuing to happen, why populations in certain countries are way overpopulated. It seems that way anyway, to the point where there's these camps where people live in what they're calling refugee camps, or camps where there's bare minimum existence almost. And so in Canada, from the 1960s until now, in my opinion, we have slipped a long way down the slippery slope, so to speak. And the homeless people that are in this country now is a kind of a reflection on how we've slipped. There's many different reasons as to why this has happened, and I don't specifically want to get into all of those because it's a multi-factor type of thing. It involves the cost of living, it involves the cost of housing, it involves COVID and the difficulties of the COVID years, it involves provincial governments doing things that affected where people were kind of held for treating them with things like illness or mental illness or whatever the case may be. And so there's a variety of things occurring there. But one thing I would like to say is that the state of affairs in Canada right now, being at one point in time, in my opinion, in the 60s, a very great promising nation, we have slipped a long way. And the state of existence right now in every city and town right across the country, if it isn't lawlessness and things like that affecting the daily lives of people, it's seeing some of these poor homeless people just walking the streets and doing actual things to make our city streets unsafe to walk on. Everybody that is listening to this video has encountered that. When I, in 1967, went to the World's Fair in Montreal, that was one of the pride and joys of my whole life. I could walk the streets and the back lanes of Brandon, Manitoba, where I delivered newspapers. I could walk those streets and back lanes day and night, and I actually did. I had to do my collections for newspapers, not when I delivered the papers, but go after I had delivered them. And that was usually in the dark, usually at night. I had no fear at all. Streets of Winnipeg, I won trips with other newspaper carriers to go into Winnipeg, see football games and stuff like that at the compliments of the Winnipeg Free Press. And a bunch of guys hanging out in a big hotel, run out of the hotel in the middle of the night and up to a pizza joint or a burger joint, grab the burgers, run back to the hotel, not a note of fear in our minds. And of course, Expo 67, going all the way to a strange city. I think I went with a group of about 10 guys, had a wonderful time. Not one stitch of fear or thinking about the fact that we could get into trouble here. One of my buddies and myself, we went from the Montreal island where Expo was held on, and we decided to find our way by either taking buses or walking all the way back to our hotel, which we knew was somewhere over Mount Royal. And we ended up getting back safe and not a care in the world, and it was in the dark as well. So these are things that we could do way back in the 60s, but are not at all possible to do today. And the things that are happening in the rural areas, there's danger of farm trucks and people being kind of ambushed and gasoline stolen in the middle of the night or whatever. People are having to have cameras watching over their livestock, their barns, their property and whatnot. And at the same time, what happens when a lot of these people are caught and apprehended, they get out on bail right away. There's no quick justice or whatever. And that's a whole another system that seems to have fallen by the wayside and is not like what it used to be. And so there are many factors here. And my kind of straight out opinion on the state that we find ourselves in right now in dealing with these homeless people, and a lot of them need special care, they need special treatment and whatnot. It's an absolute disgrace for our country. There are situations, there's the banks, there's different companies that are making all kinds of money, and the more money they make, they want to make more money, in fact, or whatever, and at the bottom of the heap are all the workers and the people that actually make this country run. But it seems that the elite up there are trying to cut corners, make more money. They want more and more all the time, and there's no stopping to that. And this situation is very, very dire and of concern. After the Second World War, my dad worked a little bit in northern Manitoba, where I was born, along with my sister in Sheridan, Manitoba. And he eventually didn't like underground mining, moved down to Brandon, did a little bit of construction and things like that. He was a good builder, excellent woodworker. He ended up getting a job at the Brandon Mental Hospital, which was a 4 square mile environment and totally to do with mental health. And he became a psych nurse there in 1957, and because I was a child of one of the workers, one of the psych nurses up there, I got to work there summers. So I saw a lot of things happening. It was a closed environment. There were people that were disabled mentally to the point where they had to be kept confined onto certain wards and things like that. But it was all to do with keeping them safe and keeping them working. There were all kinds of job stations there. There was cattle farming, there was crop growing, there was dairy, there was chickens, there were special construction facilities where ceramics were being built, all kinds of activities that the ones that could actually go out and do these activities were engaged in. So I want to just leave that with you. I know that the time is running out, and bye for now, and let's try to figure out what we can do for our country.